A world held hostage, the Axis powers and their ambitions. The Axis powers, a coalition forged in the crucible of the 1930s, represented a convergence of ideologies and ambitions that threatened to reshape the world. Nazi Germany, driven by Hitler's fanatical vision of racial purity and global dominance, sought to establish a vast empire across Europe and beyond. Imperial Japan, fueled by militarism and a hunger for resources, aimed to control the Western Pacific and East Asia. Italy, under Mussolini's fascist regime, aspired to recapture the glories of the Roman Empire. Together, these powers unleashed a maelstrom of conflict that engulfed the globe. The world watched in horror as Hitler's armies marched across Europe, crushing nations and subjugating their populations. Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 shattered any illusions of American isolationism, dragging the United States into a two-front war. From the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of the Pacific, a titanic struggle raged between the forces of freedom and tyranny. The cost of this conflict was staggering. Millions perished on battlefields and in occupied territories, victims of bullets, bombs, and unspeakable atrocities. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. Economies lay in ruins, and the very fabric of civilization seemed stretched to its breaking point. The world held its breath, wondering if the forces of darkness would prevail. But what if they had? What if the tide of war had turned in favor of the Axis powers? It's a chilling thought experiment, one that forces us to confront the fragility of our world and the enduring allure of what if. Let's step into that alternate timeline and explore the ramifications of an Axis victory in World War II. Turning the tide, imagining an Axis victory. Victory, as they say, has 1,000 fathers, while defeat is an orphan. To envision an Axis triumph, we must imagine a series of pivotal moments where the course of history veered sharply from its known path. Perhaps the Germans break the Allied codes, giving them a decisive edge in the Battle of the Atlantic. Maybe Japan's gamble at Midway succeeds, crippling the American fleet and opening the door to further conquests in the Pacific. Or perhaps the Manhattan Project fails, denying the Allies the atomic bomb and leaving them vulnerable to a protracted war of attrition. With each Allied setback, the morale of the free world crumbles, while the Axis powers grow bolder. Germany, having secured its grip on Europe, turns its attention eastward, seeking to realize Hitler's vision of Lebensraum in the vast expanse of the Soviet Union. Japan, triumphant in Asia, consolidates its gains and establishes a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, a euphemism for a vast empire built on exploitation and subjugation. The United States, facing a resurgent and nuclear-armed Germany, is forced to accept a negotiated peace. Great Britain, isolated and battered, becomes a vassal state of the Third Reich. The Soviet Union, shattered by war and internal strife, collapses into a patchwork of puppet states. The world, once a tapestry of diverse cultures and ideologies, is now dominated by the iron fist of the Axis powers. A world redrawn geopolitics of an Axis-dominated globe. In this unsettling New World Order, the geopolitical map is redrawn with brutal efficiency. Germany, having achieved its long-sought dream of European hegemony, establishes a vast empire stretching from the English Channel to the Ural Mountains. Within this new order, racial purity is paramount. Undesirable populations are ruthlessly eliminated, enslaved, or relegated to second-class status. The economies of conquered nations are plundered to fuel the German war machine and enrich the Nazi elite. Japan, having secured its dominance in Asia, establishes its own sphere of influence. Resources flow from conquered territories to the home islands, fueling Japan's industrial and military ambitions. The co-prosperity sphere, despite its benign name, becomes a system of brutal exploitation, with local populations subjected to forced labor, cultural assimilation, and the whims of their Japanese overlords. The United States, though spared the horrors of occupation, finds itself isolated and diminished on the world stage. Haunted by the specter of a nuclear-armed Germany, the nation retreats into a shell of its former self. The American dream, once a beacon of hope for millions, flickers dimly in a world shrouded in darkness. Life under the swastika and the rising sun, everyday existence in the new order. For those living under the yoke of Axis rule, daily life is a constant struggle for survival. In Nazi-occupied Europe, fear and suspicion are pervasive. The Gestapo, Hitler's secret police, maintains an iron grip on society, silencing dissent and ruthlessly eliminating any perceived threats to the regime. Racial laws dictate every aspect of existence, from education and employment to marriage, and even the food people are allowed to eat. In Japanese-controlled Asia, a similar atmosphere of oppression prevails. Local customs and traditions are suppressed, replaced with a bastardized version of Japanese culture. Education systems are co-opted to indoctrinate youth with the tenets of Japanese superiority. Resistance, though often met with brutal reprisals, simmers beneath the surface, fueled by the enduring human spirit of freedom.